Hey guys, Stealth here. As opposed to normal videos, we're going to be looking at Yugoslavia, the new nation pack for Wargame Red Dragon. It's not known when it's going to be out yet, but it is known that it's going to be combined with another nation pack, which is going to be Finland. For now we're looking at Yugoslavia. Now, starting off, they have the M47 Patton. This is going to be their early workhorse, so expected, let's say, introduction 50s. I think it's not going to be a very valuable tank in that regard, but it will probably have some purpose in the sense of defeating infantry vehicles or potentially defending your own IFVs as you're taking an early town. It gets more interesting when you're looking at the M84. This is, from what I've been able to gather, a variant of the T-72 that was designed by Yugoslavia itself. Now, according to to Eugen, it's going to be in 4 variants across 3 categories. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by the 3 categories. Do they mean the 3 different categories for tanks? So let's say heavy tank, medium tank, and potentially cavalry tank? Or are we looking at something like the Israeli solution where they transport infantry inside the tank? I haven't ever heard of that being suitable in a T-72, but you never know. We might actually see something like that. So as soon as we know more about this, I'll update you guys. Next up, and this is going to be their heavy, the M91 Vihor. It's going to be in 2 different variants, which might mean that we're going to be seeing one with and one without an ATGM, or potentially with different armor and gun values. They do have the 2A46 gun, which is the main gun that you see on most, if not all, Soviet tanks, and this one is no different. How they were going to make it different from the other main battle tanks of this era, I don't know. They didn't exactly explain. They just said this is in the game, or this is going to be in the game, and how exactly they're going to shape it, or what kind of armament they're going to give, they haven't told me. So we're just going to have to wait and see, and unfortunately that is going to be the motto basically for this video. Wait and see. They only gave us the names of the units that are in the DLC pack. They don't give out the stats yet. They haven't shown us any of the gameplay yet. So I know just as much as you guys. I just took the blog post that is linked in the description down below in case you want to read it for yourself. Moving on, we have the OT M60. Now this one is looking a bit old. I hope that the actual in-game ones look a bit better. It's just their basic IFV, or actually APC. It doesn't seem to be wearing any or sporting any kind of heavy armament. I do see up there on the axle system, I think that could be something along a 50 cal machine gun, maybe a 12.7, the heavy machine gun that the Red Forces usually use. If you need more firepower, they got the BVP M-80. Now we already have a BVP variant in the game. And according to Eugen, this one's going to be armed with twin 82mm RCL, so that's recoilless rifles, 20mm or 30mm autocannons, plus ATGMs for the IFVs. So with this, you'd actually have something that can really, and especially if it has the recoilless rifle, quite impressively support the infantry. I don't think that we have that many recoilless rifle transports yet. I know that we have some of them in the game, but they usually fall under the vehicle category, making them much more of a support unit, and one that, at least in my case, is quite often overlooked. I don't really find it that interesting. Moving on to support tab, they gave us some indication of what we can see there. This is the Cub M. This is something that we already have in the game. Another unit that's going to be introduced in the game, or in a variant that we probably already know, is the Neva M1. I believe the Russians or the Czech call it the Newa, N-E-W-A. I don't exactly know what kind of platform it's going to be. If you look for Newa or Neva M1, it just doesn't give you anything. So this is a placeholder, and hence the big question mark. I don't know what kind of vehicle is going to be transporting those missiles. Same goes for the Neva M1T. This is, from what I've been able to gather, a homegrown improvement of the Neva system, and it has been able to shoot down an F-117. So it has been able to shoot down a stealth fighter, and I found this image, which I find quite interesting, because the F-117, the stealth fighter, supposed to be one of those birds that you just cannot shoot down. But the NOVI M1T did it, so it's going to probably have some sort of specifics or some sort of stats that allow it to do that. I'm not sure if it's going to be better against ECM, if it's going to be having a longer range. Stuff like that is not known. What is known is that the M1T is going to be non-radar guided. They said it is impervious to seed. So it might be some version of the NOVI M1, so that big missile, but instead not being radar guided but infrared guided. That is something that I could consider for that. Next up we have the M90 Sava. It's based on the BVP M-80. That's that IFV that I just showed you a moment ago. You're going to be seeing quite a few of those BVP M-80 variants. From what I've been able to gather, the M90 Sava, and as for all the Yugoslavian units, I'm probably not pronouncing them correctly. I did my best to look it up, but having multiple different languages being spoken in Yugoslavia when it was still in existence doesn't make my job any easier. So if I don't pronounce it correctly, then just excuse me for that. Anyway, the M90 Sava, from what I've been able to gather, I'd say it's a Strela weapon system that they have on top there. Next one is the RL4M Brdska. Again, an anti-air platform. Not exactly known what kind of missile. Not exactly known what kind of transport, although this one looks like it's a modified pickup / flatbat from World War II. Missile specs, again, completely unknown. Moving on to the BOV-3 or the BOV-3. I'm not sure if this is the model that they're going to be using. I have absolutely no idea. What we can see here is that this one is a SPAG. It has those dual, if not triple barrel machine guns or autocannons. This one also seems to come equipped with a couple of surface-to-air missiles, but I'd be surprised if they would put those in the game. My reasoning behind that is that the BOV-3 might be the early cheap AA unit. So let's say a 25, maybe 30 point unit. Those usually don't come with any surface-to-air missiles. The BOV-30, however, is a further development of the BOV-3. This one is more or less using the same frame, but is armed with 30mm cannons. Now, again, the picture quality is atrocious, but this is basically the best I could find. If you have a look at the shape of the hull, I'd say that this thing might very well be amphibious. And that is something that is always handy, especially if you want to do some sort of naval or river crossing. If you're looking for something a little bit more modern for anti-air wise, you have the Foka. Again, from what I've been able to gather, a 20mm or 30mm dual barrel anti-air unit, or SPAG. I don't see a radar mounted in this unit, but they might be built into the turret. So they might have a target tracking device inside the turret. Again, stats unknown, but from what I've been able to theory craft, I'd say the BOV-30, so that is this one, I'd say it's not radar guided. This one might be radar guided, and this one is probably, if not definitely, going to be radar guided. That would be my likely assumptions for those different versions. And then they also said on the blog post that they're going to have several versions of the Praga. Now this is the M93 Praga. The Praga is the weapon system from what I've been able to gather, and the M93 is the transport. So with this, you basically have another non-radar guided anti-air SPAG, or just a SPAG. Moving on, AirTab. They have quite a few homegrown planes, or home designed. This is the Soko J-22 Orao. It's introduced in 1967, taking out of service, I believe, early 80s. I don't think that this is going to be anything that is going to be very competitive. Potentially, I see this thing having rocket pods. So those ground attack rocket pods that you can use to strafe stuff in tacticals or in order to just quickly dispense of enemy anti-air platforms. More advanced is the Soko G4 Super Galeb. 1984 to 1991 is when it was in service. Armament not known, but it looks like a fighter, potentially a fighter bomber to me. That is what I expect the role of this aircraft to be. You can see that under the wings it does have some weapon pylons, so there are quite a few attachment points there. I don't expect it to be very heavily armed, but we'll just have to see what they have in mind for this. Next up is the Soko J-22 Orao. This one from 1978 onwards, and from what I've seen, some of these are still in existence and still operational. I don't know a lot about this bird. It's, from what I'm gathering from the picture and from the airframe design, I'd say it's a fighter, potentially an interceptor. But I don't really see interceptors being used a lot, if at all, in Wargame, except for 10v10s. So let's go with the fighter designation. And then for missiles, well, it's 1978, so we're probably going to see some long-range radar-guided missiles, and potentially short-range air-to-air missiles or short-range infrared missiles in case it has to go up against units in a dogfight. And this is where stuff gets interesting. This is the NOVI Avion, or Avion. It's not something that was actually built, but it is a plane that, unfortunately, before it was to be taken into service, was cancelled. As you might have gathered from the look and basically the feel of the aircraft, it was influenced heavily by the Rafale. And the Rafale, or this aircraft, is sometimes designated as the baby Rafale, because the Rafale influences are very heavily there, but it is also, of course, a bit of Yugoslavian technology. Next step, infantry. Now, most of the infantry pictures that I have are placeholders, because there just aren't that many pictures, if at all any, of the pictures of the Yugoslavian military forces, as far as the infantry goes. This is the Padobranci, which is the paratroopers, and no, they will probably not be deployed by aircraft unless Wargame has completely redone their own mechanics. Not likely, so these are probably going to be helicopter-borne. Then we have the, and this is where the pronunciation gets interesting, the Mornaricka Pes, or the Marines, or Naval Infantry. We have the Proleteri, or Proleteri, shock infantry. Nothing is known about these guys. It's just a designation in the blog post. There's very, very little known about them on the internet in general, so a big question mark there. This is the Brdska Pes, which is the light infantry. I'm assuming that these guys are going to have some sort of medium-range anti-tank weapon, machine gun and assault rifle, something along the lines of the Gorskys that we have in Wargame at the moment. Then we have the Mehanizowana Pes, which is the mechanized infantry. Again, not a lot is known about them. Could be standard line infantry. In the blog post it specifically said mechanized infantry, but what that exactly means, I don't know. So I think that we're going to be seeing these guys in their IFVs and their APCs as regular line infantry. And then they have the TO. This is even a more vague designation than anything I've seen before. We know that they're militia and that they're armed with a Tommy gun. And that's all. No idea if they're armed with some sort of cheap or outdated anti-tank weapon, but it's militia, so they have that capacity. Then, the Recon infantry. There are quite a few different pronunciations for this, but I'm going to go with Granicari. Recon infantry, nothing too special about this, except, and this is something that I unfortunately misdid in my presentation here, this Recon infantry group is a two-man squad. It's armed with the RT-20 anti-material rifle, unless I'm mixing them up with the Senke, but I believe that that is the one that the Granicari have. This means that it's an anti-material rifle, not your standard sniper rifle, so it probably has 1 point of anti-armor, or armor penetration. And what this means is that, and that's something that the blog post also mentioned of course, this means that this is the only and first Red 4 unit that has an anti-material sniper rifle, which is definitely something that you can use to operate behind enemy lines, snipe command vehicles, snipe artillery potentially, go after anti-air units, and well, still come out on top without being detected hopefully. Then there's the Senke. Disregard the RT-20 anti-material rifle. I believe that that is not for the special forces but for the Granicari. And then they also have some outdated or old stuff. I can see some World War II scenarios being fought out in Wargame, because they have the SO-76 Hellcat, or the M18 Hellcat. Again, no pictures, so you're just going to be seeing the US vehicles here. They also have the SO-90 Jackson, or the M36 Jackson. Basically a different tank destroyer. They have the SO-105 Priest, or the M7 Priest. Not exactly sure where we're going to be seeing this, but it could be a 105mm howitzer, mortar. I don't know how they're going to put that into Wargame, because I don't believe that we have any such unit in Wargame currently. Next up, the M8 Greyhound, or the M8 Greyhound. Just your, I don't know, armored car? I believe that we do have these in Wargame already, but I just never ever use them, so that's why I'm not familiar with the design that much. Then there's the T-34B, so with just one Yugoslavia deck you have quite a few military vehicles from World War II already. And unfortunately there are no, let's say, pre-1970 decks available in Wargame, as in that is not a filter that you can apply. The pre-1980s decks, of course, are possible, and I would like to have a pre-1970 filter so you can have a bit of a potentially very spammy war with T-34Bs, Greyhounds, Priests, Hellcats, and the likes of those. And of course there are some other nations that still use these older designs. South Korea comes to mind. Now, that's not all good stuff about this deck. They also said there are a few balancing factors, such as the lack of good ATGMs. They have bad to mediocre ATGMs. It's the Fagot and the Militia ATGM variant. Now, they did say that the Militia was going to come in several different warhead upgrades, so the warhead itself might get better, but that doesn't tell us anything yet about the rocket or the missile itself. Meaning that the range on that thing could still be very limited. And if it is indeed limited, then that means that you're going to be risking your ATGM infantry or vehicles in order to use these. It also means that their tanks might not be armed with heavy anti-tank missiles. It's not known at this stage. They also have limited motorized transports. They said specifically that the IFVs and APCs are going to be abundantly useful in mechanized and armored decks, but in motorized decks you're going to be limited by transports. So this might mean that you have more infantry choices than you have transports, and that could very well be a problem, but again we'll have to see. And finally, they have limited tube artillery, which means howitzers and mortars are going to be limited in availability and different type of units that you have. Not known what the rocket artillery is. They haven't exactly told me anything about that, so this is the way that we know about it now. And that's all that I have for you. I don't know anything else. This is all I've been able to gather from the blog post. I hope that now at least you have a bit of an idea of how these guys, or what kind of units these guys have, and potentially how they could be played. But until we have any stats, anything else is going to be just theory crafting, and I personally don't want to waste too much time on that. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. You can ask me anything, but I don't know anything more than is in the blog post, so I don't have any kind of pre-early access to this DLC. So I know as much as you guys, and probably a bit less, because I'm not that well versed in Yugoslavian forces. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll see you soon for more Wargame.